So ever since I was a little girl, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and it would feel like my stomach was eating itself. It was just horrible pain, and I would just roll around for 7 hours until the next morning, and the pain would subside. And so this would happen, every week, just randomly, sometimes twice a week, since I was 5. So I grew up seeing a lot of these machines. I did HIDA scans and MRIs and all sorts of, strange regimens, and skipped months of school. And so my dad actually decided to quit his day job and look for a specialist for me. So spent years looking for a doctor, and he finally found Dr. Peng. And Dr. Peng was not a fancy specialist. He was this amazing pediatrician with really, really good wallpaper. And Dr. Peng became kind of like my uncle. He would just see me weekly. I mean, this was way far and beyond what a typical, pediatrician does. See me weekly, and just, play detective with me. Like this week, let's try to not drink any orange juice. And the next week he would say, how did you feel? And so he really taught me over 12 years to completely change my diet, to completely change how I exercised, how I managed pain as a child, how I managed stress and medication. And after 12 years, got rid of 90% of my attacks, slowly and surely. So, I really owe so much of my daily happiness. I still get attacks, and Dr. Peng's advice is the habits that I've formed from my childhood that still get me out of those painful attacks. So I looked around. I started some companies prior to this, but I really wanted to go back and solve the problem that I had as a child, but also just scale this amazing experience I had as a child, this loving doctor that was always with me, this 24/7 care team. We wanted to look at chronic disease, as Brenda said. Chronic disease is 84% of U.S. healthcare costs. We've gotten so good at infectious disease treatment, but chronic disease, because it's lifestyle, because it's decades long, we're still really bad at it. And so, how can you extend that great relationship you have with a doctor or a nurse, and put that in your pocket, right? How do you have a 24/7 doctor or nurse that's infinitely scalable? And the only way that we came up with was AI. You have to do this through AI. So I spent 5 years with some brilliant AI technologists from Harvard and Stanford and MIT. And 5 years later, we came up with Lark. We launched Lark in late 2015, and it's an AI nurse. So I'm going to try to show you what Lark is. So imagine you can go and chat with someone 24/7, and she's watching over you. Let's see. Can you see this? Great. So let's say I have diabetes. Okay. Oh, sorry. Great. So let's say I have diabetes. So she says, hey, I'm your Lark coach. I'm here to guide you. Though diabetes can feel a little overwhelming at times, it's something you can manage. So you just text with her. Sometimes you talk about different disease-specific nutrition. You talk about exercise. We look at 70 different devices. So if you have a glucometer, if you have a weight scale, if you have a blood pressure monitor, it all ties in. So we are sitting on top of all of this IoT data. We track your exercise, your sleep, all automatically through low-power sensors on the phone, and then we chat with you about it. We do AI therapy, so you can have 5-minute check-ins of cognitive behavioral therapy with the patient, with your coach. And she says, hey, I just want you to be healthy. So, the idea is just to have a conversation, right? And we found that texting and conversational AI is just such a normal, simple way for people to have a conversation and to relate their issues. So she says, hey, what did I have for breakfast? Today I had a bagel and some coffee and a piece of apple. Great. So remember, right now I am diabetic. So let's see what she says about that. So she says, great, got in some fruit. That's a green thing, a green badge. Go me. So she starts with something positive. And then she asks me, well, did the coffee have a significant amount of added sugar? So we're always kind of keeping track of those teachable moments, right? If you don't know, as a diabetic, how much is significant, you can always ask her, what's significant? And she'd teach you. I know I had my coffee black. So she says, great job. And so it's these small things. Like, we have diabetics that come to us that say, I didn't realize orange juice was not good for me, and these are just small things that daily teachable moments that we can be great. Oh, perfect. Thank you. That was the magic touch. Oh, gone again. Great. So Lark basically gives you green, yellow, red, and then, what about diabetics? Diabetics need to carb count, right? And so instead of having every day saying, I had 3 grams of unbleached, white flour, who knows what, 3 grams actually is, she just asks, was it larger or smaller than this? So it was a little smaller, it was a small bagel. And she'll then correlate that to your glucose levels. So she says, okay, this is one carb, one serving of carbs, and she then coaches you throughout the day of how to manage those carbs. So, this is just one example of the hundreds of thousands of interventions that we have. She looks at my sleep, so this is all automatically captured. We just look at the low power sensors on your phone, and we figure out not just how many steps you're taking, but are you sleeping? Are you running? Are you biking? You can use machine learning to figure out so many things about a person just by all of this, sorry, technical difficulties. Great. Huh? Yeah, oh, this, okay, great. So, then she says, hey, I saw your recent blood glucose levels, they're healthy, so let's move on. So, this goes on, and I'll basically just kind of finish it up. We give you recommendations for medication, but let's say you don't want to take your medication because the last 3 days you've been feeling completely nauseous. And so this is something that we think a doctor really needs to take a look at, or a nurse. And here we escalate to the right nurse network. We work with many national health plans, and we manage the patients. We send them to the telephonic nurse network, and in real time we'll send them all the data that's highly relevant. So I guess this is a great. All right. So, oh, okay. Yeah, and so all of the data that we just captured through conversation is captured here. So all of the data here, here's my therapy notes, here's the glucose numbers. Oh. That's okay. So maybe you can help me there. So can you? Oh, perfect. All right. Okay, so I'm going to be extremely careful about it. That's okay. I can keep on talking if it doesn't work. Bear with me. So after 5 years, we launched in late 2015. Apple named us the top 10 apps of the year out of all 2 million apps. Forrester named us the most innovative digital health product of the year. And this one is my favorite, next to Uber, Airbnb, Slack, WeChat, Snapchat as the top 10 most innovative companies in the world. So, for us, we trained our AI nurses on 1 million patients. And after 5 years of R&D, our AI nurse became the first fully medically reimbursed AI nurse that can fully replace 100% a live healthcare professional. So we are part of Brenda's great network, and we've been able to help 1 million patients get healthier. We've been able to really start, replacing, not replacing, because there's always a place for in-person live health accountability, but as Brenda mentioned, there's only 35,000 people that were going to in-person sessions with the diabetes prevention program. How can you scale that to tens of millions of people? So telemedicine has been a great way of doing that. There's some great companies that have brought in the in-person experience where you go to a classroom with 12 other people onto the web where there's social accountability and telemedicine-based coaching. That's really exciting, but there's still limitations there. I mean, there's just not enough people in the world to have a 24/7 nurse and health team for each one of the patients. So we decided to go completely the opposite way and create an AI nurse, a one-to-one personal coach that responds to you no matter when it is, within 2 seconds, and that has equivalent clinical outcomes to live healthcare professionals. So there are 3 things that we learned along the way. And the first is the idea of understanding your user. Understanding the patient. Several folks here have talked about the idea of B2B to C, right? Understanding that actual end patient. And we believe that the best way to do that is not just by, talking to them, because we don't have that much time, but the idea of doing passive collection of data. And that's where I think the IoT world has really exploded and will just shift our entire healthcare system to a much more continuous, longitudinal data-based healthcare system. The idea of taking all of this IoT from blood pressure monitors, from Apple Watches, and putting it in these huge data lakes like Apple Health Kit, like Google Fit. The idea of sharing that data, whereas before every single company felt like their health data was their proprietary data. This opening of this data ecosystem, that is truly critical to telemedicine, succeeding as the next frontier. The idea of then having so much data comes to the next barrier. The next barrier is, I've talked to a lot of providers who have said, we now get so much data. We integrated Validic, we get data from 80 different devices. We have too much data now, right? And the idea of figuring out a way to go beyond that data, because they don't have time, you guys don't have time to do all of that analysis. So what if you could use AI to do that coaching? we worked with some great health experts to digitize sleep interventions, to digitize diabetes interventions. Harvard and Stanford faculty members that were excellent in their field. Even an NBA coach, we took these coaches to digitize all of the interventions from the CDC, from the DEAP, from the AHA. And the first generation of Lark, people said, this is a great tool. This is a great monitor. We gave them reports. This was in 2012. And, I was somewhat happy of what we did, but I was not really satisfied. And so I looked around and I said, what are we missing? Why is this not feeling like a personal relationship yet? And I looked back at my life and I realized half of the equation that was great for me that I didn't put into this product was my dad. My dad was such a loving influence. He was the one who, after my doctor said, don't eat French fries, don't eat more than 8 French fries because you're going to get a gallbladder attack, he was the one that was actually there telling me, hey, I think you've had enough. How many was that? That was 8. And so the idea of adding in this compassionate, kind of friendly relationship into the AI became this core ingredient that I had totally missed in the first 2 years of our R&D. So then we said, how do we systematically create love and compassion in an AI? And so we started working with some of the most brilliant Harvard and Stanford faculty members, people that started the Compassion Lab at Stanford. There's a lab for compassion and altruism. We worked with some of the thought leaders in cognitive behavioral therapy, in positive psychology. Basically, people who had devoted their lives to creating compassion, but in a scientific way. And we embedded that into all of our AI conversations. And we were so excited that once we started doing that and we relaunched as a conversational AI, that people started saying, she understands me. She is my cheerleader. She is a friend who listens. And that was so exciting because that was a shift from it to she. And for me, compassionate AI is all about extending that human relationship. In the last year, we've had 355 million text messages between our AI nurses and patients. And it just shows that when you give someone love and show them how to be compassionate to themselves while they're struggling with all of these chronic diseases, that people want to engage. They want help. 355 million text messages is equivalent to 20,000 full-time nurses. And the idea of just bringing that on with a few more Amazon servers is really exciting to me. The more that we have of information, the more that our AI nurse is learning. And so this compassionate AI is getting smarter. It's getting more tone. It's getting more personality. We now talk to people who are a little more snarky in a different way than people who like just pure positive reinforcement. And for us, we've now automated nurses in not just diabetes prevention, but type 2 diabetes, hypertension, behavioral health, and general wellness. So, I think that if anything, the thing that I took from my childhood, from my dad, from Dr. Peng, is that healthcare is as much about health as it is about care. And the compassion and the empathy and the ability to scale that for your patients is something that I think is so critical as we move forward. And I think that telemedicine can do that. So thank you.
So by the way, all her slides will be online, so I apologize I missed a couple of slides. She makes amazing slides. Some questions about
Have you decided to venture into the space of insulin adjustment through this vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have started to look at that and through algorithms, and it's it's on its way, but we haven't done it yet.
Did you see bringing Lark in other languages also? Or it's available in the other languages?
Yeah, so right now it's only available in English, but I totally think that, especially with the world really transitioning toward chronic disease as being the main disease and the main killer, we have basically architected our systems to be localized into many languages. Our first version of our AI engine was actually sold in all Apple stores across the world, so we actually were able to localize to 12 languages. But this is our 4th generation AI engine. It's just so huge, but definitely looking at that in the near future.
So question is that, and maybe I missed this in the presentation, so it's a definite AI platform, but if the individual wants to speak to a nurse or say, I use this in my office, which I think is great, so patients who have common questions can get them answered.
Yeah.
But at some point that they want to transition to talk to a live person, I can review all the notes that were generated. So do we have that ability?
Yes, absolutely. So we escalate to nurses at the right time when there are critical issues that we can't handle. So if that's a hypoglycemic event, we escalate. And then we provide real-time data so that that nurse knows exactly what's been happening within their workflow. So whether they use some sort of population health management workflow, it's all data that's in real time sent through an API. We totally believe in that model, which is, we're not trying to replace doctors or nurses. We're simply trying to extend and be the first line of defense. There's a lot of repetition in the work that you guys do, in the work that your nurses do, that we think can just be done through AI.
Hi, amazing. The question I have is, how about somebody like me? I'm an emergency room physician. I'm a shift worker. My night is not sometimes sleep. Sometimes I'm working. Does it account for when people, I mean, you said it uses a low power sensor, so say like if you have an Apple Watch, is this inspiring Apple to make their battery life longer so you don't have to unplug it every day?
I hope we inspire Apple to be better. So the idea is that, if you have other devices that you wear, there's some sleep monitors that we tie to. And the idea is to have 24/7 monitoring. You can even use your phone, and when you're not using your phone, we know that you're likely sleeping. And so we're just pulling data from the areas that
it's amazing.
Thank
you. And then
you.
are you guys going into, should I go to the emergency room or urgent care, primary care doctor?
This is mainly through payers right now, so we're working mainly through payers, and we work with some IDNs. Yeah.
Congratulations, great work.
Thank you.
In working with some junior high students recently around mood disorders, it's so prevalent in the schools, of course. Yeah. So I'm just curious about age demographic and how do you adjust for age, and how do you maybe get in the loop of maybe peer counseling in a way that kids talking to kids is also very powerful. Mm-hmm. So through the use of a clinician plus augmenting with other kids who understand what it is at that age. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. For us, we've seen some really powerful things as we've brought in third-party agents, so to speak. The building small social circles with an AI-assisted guide. So this idea is that, the other day, I love going to dance class, and so I always go on Saturday mornings. And on Friday, Lark actually pinged me and said, hey, I know that you always go on Saturday to your exercise class. Would you like to bring a friend? And I was like, oh, I didn't think of it. And she just popped up a text message, and she said, who would you like to bring? And I invited my old friend that I hadn't seen for years. And so what we think of as a great role for AI is the sparking of a conversation. So we don't work with kids right now, but I would love that idea of the sparking of a good conversation, and then having the kids talk, and then having Lark really as almost as an AI moderator. So I think that behavioral health is one of these things where real-time conversations is so much more critical than seeing a therapist 3 weeks later.
Thank you so much for the amazing talk. I think all of you can see why she's a superstar CEO and founder.